On July 4th, 1776, our founders broke with the most powerful monarchy in the world to declare the independence of a fledgling republic. It's difficult for us today, over 2 centuries later, to fully appreciate the boldness of what they did. In 1776, the record of popular government was dismal. Experiments in self-government had failed so quickly and so consistently over the preceding 3,000 years that most people thought popular government was theoretically interesting, but absolutely unrealistic. If our founders' declaration had been bold but unrealistic, we wouldn't still be celebrating it today. Instead, they initiated the most enduring and successful republic in human history. They did this by matching the boldness of their vision with a clear-eyed, practical understanding of popular government's past failures. They knew that to found a republic that would endure, they had to address the causes of those failures. On that July 4th, and in the host of subsequent moments through which they deeded us this singularly successful government, the founders worried that we might forget the lessons they'd been so careful to learn, and they worried that our forgetting would put this republic in peril. The problem of faction, the spirit of party. These are the phrases the founders used to describe the most potent problem to which earlier republics succumbed. Today we hear talk of a culture war between red states and blue, between religious conservatives and secular liberals. But whatever the words, the histories which our founders studied so carefully told over and over a story of factions so contentious as to topple entire republics. James Madison, the father of the Constitution and our 4th president, diagnosed the problem of faction as republic's most dire threat in his influential Federalist No. 10.
Among the numerous advantages promised by a well-constructed union, none deserves to be more accurately developed than its tendency to break and control the violence of faction. The friend of popular governments never finds himself so much alarmed for their character and fate as when he contemplates their propensity to this dangerous vice. The instability, injustice, and confusion introduced into the public councils have, in truth, been the mortal diseases under which popular governments have everywhere perished.
Our first president, George Washington, dedicated his farewell address to warn us of factionalism's peril.
The spirit of party exists under different shapes in all governments, but in those of the popular form, it is seen in its greatest rankness and is truly their worst enemy. The alternate domination of one faction over another, sharpened by the spirit of revenge, natural to party dissension, is itself a frightful despotism. It serves always to distract the public councils and enfeeble the public administration. It agitates the community with ill-founded jealousies and false alarms, kindles the animosity of one part against another.
If, in the founders' view, faction was the disease, then checks and balances were the cure. Everyone who's had a high school government class knows that ours is a divided government. Less discussed is the fact that this system was aimed primarily at inoculating ourselves against the excesses of factionalism. The founders intended that the separate branches of our government would, by checking and balancing each other, make it difficult for factions to impose their will on everyone else. But like the doctor who writes us a prescription while telling us frankly that we still have to modify our lifestyle, the founders understood that the effectiveness of the checks and balances cure requires us to work respectfully with each other. Only as we seek out solutions that cross ideological and institutional divides can we identify the measures that will win broad enough support to make it through our complicated system. James Madison described this part of the founders' prescription as a need to engage each other in a spirit, as he put it, of reason, benevolence, and brotherly affection. Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence and our 3rd president, wrote that this portion of the prescription would require us to put the common interests that we share ahead of the narrower interests that divide us.
We have no interests nor passions different from those of our fellow citizens. We have the same object, the success of representative government. Nor are we acting for ourselves alone, but for the whole human race. Our experiment is to show whether man can be trusted with self-government. The eyes of suffering humanity are fixed on us, and on such a theater, for such a cause, we must suppress all smaller passions and local considerations.
The founders knew that divided government guaranteed that we would either embrace solutions supported by a large majority, or we would end up simply frustrated. Today's politics prove that the founders' fears were prescient. Our politics are rife with partisanship and special interest influence. Our Congress is divided by a very wide aisle, and while they hesitate to talk to each other, our representatives can hardly avoid the 34,000 lobbyists that argue for the few but powerful. The result is the very result the founders intended for those who approach self-government in a self-centered manner: frustration for all. Regrettably, in our frustration with contemporary American politics, we all find it too easy to wag the finger of blame at everyone else. But when we do this, we find ourselves at odds with the founders' advice. They understood that factionalism was rooted in certain failings of human nature, failings in which we all share. We're all swayed by our special interests. We're all partisan on at least some issues. And when our most powerful self-interests or our most deeply held convictions are at stake, it becomes difficult for all of us to hear the merits in differing perspectives, and easy for all of us to see those who hold differing views as unreasonable, extreme, and the chief source of our problems. Our second president, John Adams, described our human failings with genuine insight.
Insensible of the beams in our own eyes, are we not quick in discerning motes in those of others? To what imperfection in our nature, excepting this, can mankind impute the multiplied diversity of opinions, customs, laws, and religions that have prevailed? From what other source can such fierce disputations arise?
The more we're caught up in such factious dynamics, the more bitter the checks and balances pill. In contrast, however, the more we embrace the second portion of the founder's prescription and work to modify our behavior, really work to understand the merits of differing perspectives, the more like a cure checks and balances really are. It is, after all, our recognition that those who hold differing views are as reasonable and devoted to our country as we are that makes divided government capable of promoting, as the Constitution puts it, the general welfare. I hope we'll all mark this 4th of July with a renewed commitment to engage each other as fellow Americans, and despite our deepest differences, to treat each other with the reason, benevolence, and brotherly affection that Madison recommended. If you're looking for concrete ways in which to do this, and you're not yet a member of the Common Interest, I hope you'll check out our website. Together, the members of the Common Interest have demonstrated the strength of citizens willing to work across partisan and special interest divides. We've established an impressive track record of legislative achievements, practical solutions grounded in sound information that garner broad support. It would be difficult to find a more powerful way to spend 1 hour a year putting the Founders' vision into practice. We hope you'll join us in our efforts to realize the full potential of the republic that our founders envisioned. Thank you, and happy 4th of July.